My name is Philippe Lucher. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'm going to give a quick introduction about what Enfocus Switch is. I understand that probably most of you know what it is, but this is also for the benefits of our viewers on our YouTube channel, just to give it a little bit of background. So Enfocus Switch is an automation solution, and you have to imagine it as something that can intelligently connect your workflow components together. In the field, it's lovingly called the glue of workflow, and Enfocus Switch doesn't like that term, but I'll take the liberty to mention it anyway. But that's the way you have to imagine it. What can it do? You can get jobs from many different sources, route them, use metadata intelligently by building workflows where these things flow. You can automate your PDF creation, also integrating, for instance, with an imposition solution. You can link in your web to print site and also add intelligence and integrate with downstream systems, with SiteFlow or with your MES or a quoting solution or your customer database. So this is basically where you have to see it. It can connect all these together. It achieves this by offering you connectors in the form of apps on the App Web Store. And here's an example of what it looks like in the App Web Store. Here we only see the HP and the Amazon apps. There are much more. Almost any workflow or device vendor has apps available in the store. And if you can click for me, these two are the ones that we'll be looking at today. Now, what happens is you have all these components, these apps and these connectors, and you can build them together into a workflow that either changes files or uses metadata to trigger other things. And this, as you can see here, that's a graphical way of doing this. So in today's scenario, we're going to show you a very specific scenario. And the reason that we're doing that is that SiteFlow uses Amazon AWS S3 cloud storage. So any PDF or any asset that you work with is supposed to be there before an order comes in. There isn't a possibility to use local storage for assets, but in that scenario, we presume that all the modification activities, so imposition, adding marks, doing batch imposition, anything that touches the file is not possible in that mode. So customers who have local assets need a solution, and the solution for that is to use the S3 upload plugin from Amazon to get the file up into the cloud before you submit the order. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Chad. I think you need to unmute.
Sorry about that. Can everybody see my share right now? Looking at an Amazon or an Enfocus Switch. Okay, yeah. So as Philippe mentioned, a lot of the power of SiteFlow involves our cloud rendering and images, the ability to impose and batch and things like that. And in order to do that, SiteFlow needs to be able to pull files from a URL that it can access externally. So again, if that file is inside of your environment and you've got an IT firewall or something restricted to where SiteFlow can't come into your environment and pull that file up to the cloud, then we need a way to upload those files and provide some kind of a URL that SiteFlow can access. And one of the ways we can do this is by using the HP SiteFlow app that we've created for Enfocus Switch. If you look here at the beginning of this flow, this is the Enfocus or the HP SiteFlow app. Basically what it does is behind the scenes is it can make pretty much any API call that we provide without having to do coding on your side. So all you really do is down here in the properties, configure a token and a secret that allows you access to your individual SiteFlow organization. And then you select the endpoints, the method and the endpoint for the API call that you're going to make. In this case, we have one, it's API file get file or get pre-upload. And what this does is it actually generates pre-signed URLs to our Amazon S3 bucket storage. So what this will allow you to do is basically get a URL that you can then push files up to, and then a fetch URL that you can access in your order data so that Siteflow can grab that file. So I'm going to go ahead and activate this flow and drop a file in. So this local file can be coming from pretty much anywhere within your environment as long as you can drop it into Switch. So in this case, I just have an input folder. I'm dragging a simple PDF file into there. And then I'm going to hold right after this, the app makes its calls. So the output from this API or from this app is typically 2 files. Whatever your input file was, so I got my PDF file down here, and then the response from the API call. So if I look at this, I'm going to actually open this in an editor. You can see the response payload is basically a JSON object with an upload URL, which points to an Amazon S3 URL, and a fetch upload, which Siteflow can use to pull that file down from. So using a little bit of trickery here, we can pull that information into metadata in Switch, and then use their standard HTTP worker to push this file up to that S3 URL that we've generated. So the way I'm doing that right now is that I assemble the job into a folder and then attach the metadata from the API call to that folder, which allows a JSON pickup worker to put that information into metadata so we can use it further down. In the next release of the app, which should be coming out very soon, I'll actually be attaching the metadata to both the incoming file and to the response file. So you won't need to do this step here. It'll automatically have the metadata attached to the asset and we can go directly to the next step. So we can provide this flow if anybody's interested, but I would recommend probably if you're interested in this, holding off for a week or two until version 3 comes out. I'm gonna go ahead and release this. Again, it's basically just packaging these 2 files into a folder, moving it on to the next step, and then using the JSON pickup built-in module to attach that to the job. Okay, so the next step here is using the standard upload to, or the standard HTTP element in Switch. And what we're doing here is providing a URL with a single line text with variables defined. And I kind of held this flow at the wrong spot, but let me show you how we do this. We use a single line text with variables here to pull the metadata from this job. And if I look at this job 10 that's coming through, select metadata, text, and then you can use the app to define the name of the data set you want, but in this case, the default is called response JSON. And I can go to this build path location here, select my job, and you can actually use this to browse down through the metadata here to find what you're looking for. In this case, we're looking for the upload URL. So I'm going to select that and hit OK. And then I can insert this variable into the sample value here, which basically then uses that URL for the HTTP worker instead of Switch. And that was a little confusing, but once you get this configured, it's basically just pulling down the response from the API call and using that as the URL that we're going to upload files to. Okay. So I'm doing a put in this case because a put is an action which uploads a file to a certain location typically. Sometimes this can be a post, but in this case, we're actually using a put. And then the attached file is going to be the input file from the folder that just came in. So again, these 3 steps typically won't need to be configured once we get the update to the app. But for now, this is kind of the hoop we have to jump through. So this response here, I'm going to activate the flow again, is going to be a response to uploading the file to that Amazon S3 URL that was generated. And a response on a successful one of these is just a blank response. So this isn't showing anything. But the input file will be sent to the next folder in the flow. So here's my original job. Now, what you would do typically at this point is I now have a fetch URL that points to an active file in our Amazon S3 storage bucket. So if I was creating an order that I wanted to upload that file into Siteflow, I would use that fetch URL as part of the order metadata and then push that into Siteflow. So I could use another instance of the HP Siteflow app here. And instead of doing this call, I can do a post to the API order endpoint and then populate that with whatever order data I need. So in this little demo here, I'm just going to show you that we can then download from the same S3 URL. So again, I went through that same single line text with variables here, but this time I'm pulling the fetch URL that was provided in that API response. And then we're just going to do a get. So all that's going to do is like opening a web page. It's going to pull down the file from that URL. But once I activate this, which will go ahead and use the HTTP worker to pull that file down from the Amazon S3 storage and put it in the output folder. So the naming on this is I just use the default value, so it's renamed it a little bit. But if I open this file, this is the same simple 8 PDF that I put into the input of my folder or into my flow to begin with. So that's just kind of a simple way that we can use Switch to push local files up into the cloud and then reference those into Siteflow. If you have anything in your workflow that we can't currently do in Switch, maybe you're doing an external color management engine or pre-flight, something like that, then you can typically do that work through Switch, push that off, and then once you get the modified file back, push it up into Amazon S3 and then reference that in the order submission. Pretty powerful tool. If you have any questions with this, you can follow up afterwards. We can provide sample flows from Switch or anything you need, hopefully, to get you going with that. So that's about all I had, unless there's any questions.